I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, because what I'm about to tell you will change how you see family forever. At 51 years old, I never told my husband that I secretly owned nearly half of his mother's company, a stake worth over $20 billion. For 21 years, she believed I was nothing more than an ordinary consultant driving an old car and living in a small house. She looked at me like I was the mistake her son made the burden the family had to carry. Then one Friday evening, she invited us to dinner and slid a check across the table. $275,000, the price she'd calculated to make me disappear from her son's life. She had no idea she'd been working for me all along. The next day, I took everything. But this story isn't about revenge. It's about something my grandmother taught me, that the most powerful people aren't the ones who demand to be seen. They're the ones who see everything while remaining invisible. Let me take you back to where it all began. The message arrived at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, and I knew exactly what it meant. After 21 years of marriage to Vincent Morrison, I'd learned to read the silences. This particular silence, the kind where my husband stared at his phone while his coffee went cold, meant his mother was planning something. I stood at our kitchen counter in our modest East Austin bungalow, watching Vincent's jaw tighten as he read. The morning light filtered through our second-hand curtains, casting shadows across the Formica countertops we'd never bothered to replace. "It's from my mother," he said quietly. I didn't need him to tell me. Diana Morrison only sent formal text messages when she wanted something, when she was orchestrating something. He turned his phone toward me. The message glowed on the screen. "Vincent, darling. Friday dinner, 7 p.m. Bring Eliza. Important family matter. Must discuss Sophie's future." Mother, my hands were steady as I poured my coffee, though my heart had started that familiar heavy beat it always did when Diana's name came up. 21 years of family dinners. 21 years of polite smiles that never reached her eyes. 21 years of being seated at the far end of the table, dismissed before I even spoke. "We don't have to go," Vincent said, watching my face. I looked at my husband, 50 years old, salt and pepper hair, kind eyes that still saw me the way he had that night at the museum gala 23 years ago. He'd spent 2 decades defending me to his family, 2 decades standing between me and their judgment. "Yes, we do," I said. "Ellie," he used my nickname, the one only he was allowed. "She'll have an agenda. She always does." I sat down across from him at our kitchen table, the wooden one we'd bought at an estate sale 19 years ago for $40. It was scarred and worn, but it was ours. Real. Honest. "I know," I said. Vincent studied my face, and I saw the moment he registered something different. "You've been different since last year. Quieter. Like you're waiting for something." He was right, but he didn't know how right. What Vincent didn't know, what I'd carefully kept from him for 14 months, was that I'd been preparing for exactly this moment. I'd seen it building in the small comments at last Thanksgiving, in the way Diana looked at me like I was a problem that needed solving, in the way our daughter Sophie had started treating me like an embarrassment. They thought they had all the power. They thought I was exactly what I appeared to be, a 51-year-old logistics consultant who drove a 2015 Honda Civic and lived in an 850-square-foot house in a neighborhood that was gentrifying but hadn't quite arrived. What they didn't know was this. 25 years ago, I'd inherited $500,000 from my grandmother, Eleanor Hartley. I'd used that money to buy stock in a struggling real estate development company run by Diana Morrison, who was drowning in debt from the 2008 financial crisis. I'd studied that company for months. The fundamentals were solid. The projects were well positioned. Diana just needed capital and humility. My grandmother had taught me the difference. So I started buying. Quietly. Through layers of corporate entities that couldn't be traced back to me. Within 3 years, I owned 15%. By the time I met Vincent at that charity fundraiser, I owned 31%. By our wedding, 42%. Today, I owned 47% of Morrison Development Group. At current valuations, my position was worth approximately $20 billion. Diana Morrison had been working for me for 17 years. She just didn't know it. And on Friday, I was going to tell her. I waited until Vincent left for work before I opened my laptop. Our home office was really just a converted corner of our bedroom, a desk from IKEA, a filing cabinet, and a view of our neighbor's chain-link fence. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to look like, the workspace of a woman who made $65,000 a year doing supply chain consulting for small Austin businesses. But when I logged into Bloomberg Terminal, the screen told a different story. Morrison Development Group was trading at $187 per share. Market capitalization $18.7 billion. My 47 million shares were worth $8.789 billion at current market price. I ran the calculation I ran every morning, the one that had become a ritual. Total portfolio value, including private holdings and dividends, $20.3 billion. I could have bought Diana's Westlake Hills estate 50 times over. Instead, I'd chosen this bungalow on Holly Street where the property taxes were reasonable and the neighbors knew each other's names. I pulled up the folder I'd been building for 14 months, Morrison Contingency Plan 2025. Inside were private investigator reports documenting Diana's gambling trips to Las Vegas. Financial forensics showing $238 million in losses over 3 years. Evidence of embezzlement, $53 million siphoned from Morrison Development through fake consulting fees and inflated contractor costs. And at the bottom of the folder, the letter my grandmother had written 25 years ago, the one that had shaped every decision I'd made since. I'd been 15 when Grandma Eleanor died. She'd been my favorite person in the world, sharp, funny, unimpressed by pretense. She'd built Morrison Development alongside Diana in 1985, equal partners, best friends. 2 women in Texas real estate when that was still a radical thing. Then, in 1998, everything fell apart. The city of Austin put out bids for a downtown revitalization project. $45 million contract. Eleanor wanted to bid honestly. Diana wanted to rig it, pay off a city council member, guarantee the win. Eleanor found out. Gave Diana a choice, go to authorities or she would. Diana chose differently. She forced Eleanor out, bought her shares for $2 million, 1/10 of their value, destroyed her life's work to protect a secret. My grandmother walked away because she refused to be part of corruption. She lost everything. Her company, her reputation, her best friend. But before she died, she wrote me a letter. I'd read it so many times I could recite it from memory, but I opened the scanned copy anyway. Her handwriting, elegant, firm, unshakable, filled the screen. My dearest Eliza, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if my instincts are correct, Diana Morrison has fallen again. Greed is a cancer, it always metastasizes. I'm leaving you $500,000. It's all I have left after Diana's betrayal. I want you to use it to do what I couldn't save her. Not because she deserves it. Because her employees do. Because the company we built together still has good bones. Because redemption is always possible, even for those who don't seek it. Buy into her company when she's desperate. Be the safety net she'll never acknowledge. And when the time comes when she's about to destroy everything again, stop her. Not with cruelty, but with truth. Make her see what I couldn't make her see, that integrity isn't weakness. That power without accountability is just tyranny. That the people you dismiss might be the ones holding your world together. Save the company. But more importantly, save her soul. I love you, my darling girl. Be better than I was. Be better than she is. Your Grandma Eleanor. I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet of our small house. In 3 days, I would walk into Diana Morrison's Westlake estate and reveal the truth. I would show her that the daughter-in-law she'd dismissed for 21 years had been the majority shareholder all along, that every expansion she'd taken credit for had been funded with my capital, that her empire existed because I'd chosen to save it. But first, I needed to make breakfast. Vincent liked scrambled eggs with cheese, and after 21 years, I knew exactly how he liked them made. Because that was the thing about power that Diana had never understood. The most powerful people are the ones who choose when to use it, and my time was coming. Vincent came home at 6:30 the way he always did on Tuesdays. We had rhythms, Vincent and I. Small rituals built over 21 years. Tuesday was pasta night. Thursday was Thai takeout from the place on East 6th. Saturday mornings we walked to the farmer's market and bought flowers. Nothing expensive, just whatever looked cheerful. These were the things that made a marriage. Not grand gestures, just showing up every day, choosing each other. Smells good, Vincent said, kissing the top of my head as I stirred marinara sauce. Your mother texted again, I said, keeping my voice light. Confirming Friday. He set down his briefcase with more force than necessary. We really don't have to go. Why wouldn't we go? Because every time we have dinner at my parents' house, my mother finds a way to make you feel small. Every single time. His voice was tight with old anger. The comments about your car, the questions about when you'll get a real job, the way she seats us at the far end of the table like we're children. I turned off the stove and faced him. And you've defended me every time, for 21 years. I shouldn't have to defend my wife to my own mother. No, I agreed. You shouldn't, but you do anyway. Do you know what that means to me? He pulled me close and I rested my head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Steady, reliable, real. I just wish, he trailed off. Wish what? I wish they could see you the way I see you. Smart, capable, the best decision I ever made. Instead, they look at our house and our car and they see failure. I thought about the Bloomberg screen still glowing on my laptop in the bedroom, about the $20 billion they didn't know existed, about the fact that I'd approved the funding for the Congress Avenue Tower they'd attended a gala at last month. Vincent, I said carefully, if they did see me differently, if circumstances were different, would that change how you feel about me? He pulled back to look at me confused. What kind of question is that? Just humor me. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Do you remember the night we met? I smiled. The museum gala. You were hiding in the modern art wing. I was hiding from Patricia Blackwood, my mother's choice for my future wife. He shook his head. Oil money, Stanford MBA, all the right connections. Mom had spent the entire evening steering us together, and I finally escaped to the Rothko exhibit. And found me staring at orange and yellow. You were wearing a black dress from Macy's clearance rack. You told me later it cost $47. Everyone else was in designer gowns. And you were just standing there completely unself-conscious, looking at this painting like it was the most important thing in the world. I remembered. It had been important. The painting had felt honest in a room full of performance. I asked what you saw in it, Vincent continued, and you said it's honest, isn't it? Just color and emotion, no pretense. And I thought I want to know this woman, not because of who her family is or what she owns, but because of who she is. He took my face in his hands. So no, Ellie, it wouldn't change anything. You could be a billionaire or homeless, and I'd still choose you. Every time. The irony made my chest tight, because I was a billionaire and he still chose me, and he didn't even know it. I love you, I said. I love you too, even when you insist on going to my mother's torture dinners. We ate pasta at our $40 estate sale table, and I let myself exist in this moment, this honest, unpretentious life we'd built, this marriage based on choosing each other when there was nothing to gain, because in 3 days everything would change. Diana would know the truth. Sophie would know the truth. And Vincent? Vincent would learn that his wife had been keeping the biggest secret of all. But for tonight, we were just Eliza and Vincent Morrison eating spaghetti in our small East Austin house, holding hands across a scarred wooden table. And it was enough. Wednesday morning, I had a legitimate consulting appointment at Morrison Development Group headquarters. The irony never got old. The building was on Congress Avenue, 23 floors of glass and steel prime downtown real estate. I'd approved the funding for its construction 12 years ago through Hartley Holdings. Diana had given a speech at the ribbon cutting about her vision and business acumen. She'd never once wondered where the $200 million in financing had come from. I parked in the visitor lot my Honda Civic looking distinctly out of place among the BMWs and Teslas, and took the elevator to the 18th floor. Marcus Webb, the COO, met me in the lobby. 60 years old, competent, one of the few executives Diana hadn't run off with her management style. Eliza, thanks for coming in, he said, shaking my hand. Your logistics audit last quarter saved us $12 million. The board was impressed. I smiled. I'd been on that board meeting voting remotely through my Hartley Holdings proxy. I'd watched Diana take credit for the cost savings I'd identified. Happy to help, I said. Marcus led me to a conference room. Spreadsheets covered the table supply chain data for their new domain expansion project. $340 million development. I'd approved that funding 8 months ago. We're having some issues with contractor scheduling, Marcus said. I was hoping you could take a look. For the next 2 hours, I did what I was actually good at, solving logistical puzzles, finding inefficiencies, creating systems that worked. This was real work, honest work, and I loved it. It was also the perfect cover. At 11, Marcus's assistant brought coffee. Mr. Webb, Mrs. Morrison is asking for the Q3 reports. Tell her I'll have them by 2, Marcus said, then sighed after the assistant left. Diana's been stressed lately. More than usual. I kept my expression neutral. Oh, SEC investigation. Someone filed a whistleblower complaint about related party transactions. Anonymous tip untraceable. He lowered his voice. Between you and me, I think there might be something there. Some of the subsidiary accounting doesn't add up. My heart rate picked up, but my hands stayed steady on my coffee cup. That sounds serious. It is. The investigators have been here twice. Diana's lawyer is involved. The whole thing's making everyone nervous. I'd known about the SEC investigation for 6 months. I had to as majority shareholder. What I hadn't known was who filed the complaint, because it wasn't me. I'm sure it'll work out, I said carefully. Marcus nodded, but he looked worried. I hope so. This company's been my life for 15 years. I'd hate to see it destroyed by something stupid. After our meeting, I sat in my car for a moment before starting the engine. Someone else was investigating Diana. Someone who knew about the embezzlement, the fraud, the corruption. Someone who wanted her stopped. I pulled out my phone and called Julian Rhodes, my attorney. He answered on the second ring. Eliza, everything all right? The SEC investigation at Morrison Development. Did you file the whistleblower complaint? No, I assumed you had. I didn't. Silence on the line. Then, well, that's interesting. Someone else knows about Diana's activities. Can you find out who? I'll make some calls. Discreetly. I hung up and sat in the parking lot watching executives come and go through Morrison Development's glass doors. Somewhere in this city, someone else was building a case against Diana Morrison. The question was, were they an ally or a complication? Sophie came home Wednesday evening with a bag of laundry. Our daughter was 18, a sophomore at UT Austin, living in the dorms, but she still had a key to our house. She used to visit every week. Now it was monthly if we were lucky. Hey, Mom, she said, dropping the laundry bag by the washer. Is Dad home? Meeting ran late. He'll be back around 7. I was at the stove making chicken stir-fry. Want to stay for dinner? Can't. I'm going to Grandma Diana's. She's introducing me to the board tomorrow. Something sharp twisted in my chest. The board? Yeah, I got an internship. Marketing coordinator for the new domain project. Grandma set it up. Sophie was scrolling through her phone, not looking at me. Real career stuff, you know. I kept my voice level. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Yeah, Grandma says I have potential, that I shouldn't settle. She finally glanced up, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Something that looked like pity. Not everyone can be ambitious, I guess. The words landed like a slap. Sophie, I'm just saying some people are driven and some people, she shrugged, aren't. It's fine. Not everyone needs to be successful. I set down my spatula very carefully because my hands had started to shake. Is that what your grandmother told you? She didn't have to tell me anything, Mom. I can see it myself. Sophie's voice had that teenage certainty, that absolute conviction that comes from being 18 and knowing everything. My roommate's parents have lake houses. They take European vacations. They drive decent cars. And we what? We live in this tiny house in a neighborhood that's basically still sketchy. We shop at Costco. We drive a car that's 10 years old. Her voice rose. Do you know how embarrassing it is when my friends' parents ask what you do and I have to say you're a consultant? What does that even mean? It means I help businesses solve problems, I said quietly. It means you gave up. It means you settled. Sophie grabbed her laundry bag. Dad could have taken that job in California, the one that pays $200,000, but he won't leave Austin because of your clients, because you won't adapt. I hadn't known about the California job. Vincent hadn't mentioned it. Sophie, that's not. Grandma and Grandpa are trying to help. They offered to introduce Dad to people at their club, but you won't let him go because you're too proud to admit we need help. You're holding him back, Mom. You're holding all of us back. The chicken was burning. I could smell it, but I couldn't move to turn off the stove. When did you become this person? I whispered. I'm being honest. Isn't that what you always taught me, to be honest? She headed for the door. Grandma says honesty is just being realistic about people's potential. Your grandmother doesn't know me. Sophie turned at the door, and the look on her face broke my heart. Maybe that's the problem, Mom. Maybe there's nothing to know. She left. The door closed. The chicken continued burning. I turned off the stove and stood in our small kitchen in the house we'd chosen deliberately, surrounded by the life we'd built with intention. And I understood finally what Diana had been doing. She hadn't just dismissed me. She'd been poisoning my daughter against me, slowly, methodically over years, teaching Sophie to measure worth in square footage and brand names, teaching her that her mother's modest life was evidence of failure rather than choice, teaching her that love could be quantified, and on Diana's scale, I came up short. Vincent found me there 20 minutes later, sitting at the kitchen table with burned chicken still in the pan. "Ellie," he crouched beside my chair. "What happened?" Sophie was here. His face darkened. He'd heard the edge in my voice. "What did she say?" I told him. All of it. The internship, the comments about ambition, the California job I hadn't known about. "The California offer was 6 months ago," Vincent said quietly. "I turned it down without telling you because I knew you were happy here. Our life is here." "She thinks I'm holding you back." "She's 18 and she's been listening to my mother." He took my hands. "Ellie, look at me." I met his eyes. "My daughter is young and confused and being manipulated. But she'll grow up. She'll understand eventually. What matters is us, our marriage, our choices." "What if she never understands? What if she looks at me like this for the rest of her life?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then, Friday's dinner. "My mother's planning something, isn't she? Something involving Sophie." "I think so. And you want to go anyway." "I need to," I said. "I need to see what they're planning. I need to know how far they'll go." He studied my face, and I saw the moment he understood I was keeping something from him. But Vincent had always given me space to be myself, even when he didn't understand. "Okay," he said. "We'll go, together, whatever happens." I leaned against him, and he held me while the burned smell of dinner filled our small house. In 2 days, Sophie would learn the truth. She would learn that the grandmother she idolized was a criminal, that the mother she dismissed was the one holding everything together. She would learn that potential isn't measured in dollars and success isn't measured in square feet. But the learning would hurt, and I wasn't sure our relationship would survive it. Thursday evening, while Vincent and I watched television in our living room, Diana Morrison sat alone in her Westlake Hills estate, reviewing bank statements that spelled her doom. I know this because my private investigator Sarah Chen had been documenting Diana's activities for 14 months. I'd read her reports every Monday morning, watching the slow-motion collapse of a woman who'd built her identity on control. According to Sarah's latest report delivered that morning, Diana had been alone in her study from 8 p.m. to midnight Wednesday, surrounded by financial documents. The numbers were damning. Personal debt, $4.7 million, casino markers from Vegas, $2.3 million, cryptocurrency losses, 2021 to 2023, $187 million, failed land speculation in San Marcos, $45 million, various bad investments, $3.7 million, total losses over 3 years, $238 million. But it was worse than that. To cover those losses, Diana had been embezzling from Morrison Development Group. $53 million over 3 years, siphoned through fake consulting fees, inflated contractor costs, and personal expenses claimed as corporate. The SEC investigation wasn't just about related party transactions. It was about systematic fraud. And Diana knew she was running out of time. According to Sarah's report, Diana had been on the phone with her lawyer for 2 hours Wednesday night. Then she'd called Patricia Blackwood, the woman she'd wanted Vincent to marry 23 years ago. Patricia now ran Blackwood Legal, a corporate law firm specializing in mergers and acquisitions. She'd approached Morrison Development 6 months ago about a potential acquisition. The deal, $12 billion for the company. Diana's 18% stake would net her $2.16 billion, enough to pay off her debts, replace the embezzled funds, and escape before the SEC closed in. There was just one problem. Any sale required approval from the majority shareholder, and Patricia's due diligence team had discovered the majority shareholder was Hartley Holdings, my family trust. Diana needed me gone. Out of Vincent's life, out of the family, out of the way. That's what Friday's dinner was really about. I closed Sarah's report and looked at Vincent dozing on our second-hand couch while a cooking show played on our modest television. He had no idea his mother was a criminal. No idea she was about to destroy everything to save herself. No idea that his wife had been the only thing standing between Morrison Development and total collapse for 17 years. Tomorrow, he would learn all of it. Tomorrow, the woman he'd spent 2 decades defending would be revealed as the architect of his family's salvation, and I still wasn't sure if he'd forgive me for keeping the secret. Friday evening arrived with the kind of October heat that made Texas unforgiving even as autumn settled in. I stood in our bedroom staring at my closet, not because I had many choices I didn't, but because every choice tonight was a statement. I pulled out a dress from Talbot's. Navy blue simple, bought on sale for $87 3 years ago. It was clean and professional and unremarkable. Exactly the kind of dress a woman who made $65,000 a year would wear to dinner with her in-laws. Vincent appeared in the doorway already dressed in khakis and a button-down. "You look beautiful." "I look ordinary." "You've never been ordinary a day in your life." He came up behind me, meeting my eyes in the mirror. Last chance to turn around. I thought about Diana's check, $275,000, calculated to be exactly 7 years of my salary. I thought about Sophie sitting in that Westlake dining room aligned with her grandparents against her own mother. I thought about 21 years of polite dismissal and quiet contempt. "No," I said. "We're going." The drive from East Austin to Westlake Hills was only 10 miles, but it felt like crossing between worlds. We took Holly Street past the small houses with chain-link fences, past the taco truck that knew our order, past the kids playing basketball in driveways. Our neighbors were teachers and musicians, city workers and small business owners. People who measured wealth in Friday night barbecues and Little League games. Then we turned onto Mopac and the city began to change. The highway carried us north through Austin's heart, past the University of Texas, where I'd graduated magna cum laude in economics, past the office parks, where I still maintained my consulting practice. Traffic was light for a Friday evening. "Do you remember our wedding?" Vincent asked suddenly. "Of course." My mother cried in the bathroom, not happy tears. She told my father she'd failed as a mother because I was marrying beneath myself. I'd known this, Vincent had told me years ago, but hearing it again tonight made my chest tight. "And your father?" I asked. "Barely spoke to you the entire reception. He spent the whole time talking to business associates like if he ignored you hard enough you'd disappear. But you didn't care." "I cared that they hurt you, but I didn't care what they thought. I still don't." We exited onto Loop 360 and suddenly we were in Westlake proper. This wasn't just wealthy, this was generational wealth. Country club memberships passed down like heirlooms. Property taxes that exceeded most people's annual salaries. Vincent turned onto Valley Ridge Drive and my stomach tightened. The Morrison estate sat on 4.2 acres at the end of a cul-de-sac positioned to overlook the hill country like a fortress surveying its domain. Spanish colonial revival architecture, white stucco walls, red tile roof, arched windows that probably cost more than our entire house. It was the kind of place that appeared in Austin Home magazine with titles like Classic Elegance or Timeless Grace. The kind of place where nothing was allowed to be messy or real or human. Vincent pulled into the circular driveway behind a Mercedes S-Class and a Lexus GX. Through the windshield, every window glowed with warm light, but there was nothing welcoming about it. "Owen," Vincent said, using my grandmother's nickname for me. "Promise me something." "What, Promise me that no matter what happens tonight, we leave together, that we're still us." I took his hand. His palm was warm, familiar, real. "I promise." We sat for a moment in the cooling car. I thought about the letter in my purse. Eleanor's letter, the one I'd been carrying for 14 months, waiting for this moment. The one that would change everything. "Ready?" Vincent asked. I nodded, though my heart was racing. "Let's go." We walked up the stone pathway together, past the perfectly manicured lawn that required a team of gardeners, past the fountain that burbled expensively, past the landscape lighting that made everything look like a stage set. Vincent rang the doorbell. Through the frosted glass panels, I saw movement. Then the door opened and Carmen stood there, the housekeeper, not family. She'd worked for the Morrisons for 15 years. She'd seen everything. "Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Morrison," she said formally, stepping aside. "Please come in." But her eyes found mine, and I saw the warning there, the apology. I looked past her into the foyer marble floors, a chandelier that probably cost 6 figures, fresh flowers in Waterford crystal. No Diana, no Richard, no Sophie. Just Carmen in her uniform taking our coats like we were clients arriving for an appointment. This wasn't a family dinner. This was an execution. And as I stepped across the threshold into Diana Morrison's domain, I felt the weight of 21 years settle on my shoulders like armor, Let them try to break me. I'd been preparing for this moment my entire adult life. If you're just joining us, welcome back. In part 1, I told you how I'd secretly owned 47% of my mother-in-law's company for 17 years, $20 billion she knew nothing about. Tonight, she'd invited us to dinner to make me an offer $275,000 to divorce her son and disappear from their lives. What she didn't know was that I'd been waiting for this moment, that I'd been preparing, that the woman she'd dismissed for 21 years was about to take everything. Let me show you what happened next. Diana appeared in the foyer before Carmen could even finish taking our coats. She was 70 years old, but carried herself like a woman who'd built empires, which I supposed she believed she had. She wore a cream Chanel suit that probably cost $6,000. Her silver hair was styled in that effortless way that required weekly salon appointments. Her jewelry was understated, but expensive pearls, always pearls. "Vincent, darling," she said, her voice warm as she kissed his cheek. Then she turned to me, and the warmth evaporated like morning dew. "Eliza," one word, delivered with a smile that never reached her eyes. She leaned in for an air kiss, her lips passing somewhere near my cheek without actually making contact. Her perfume was Chanel No. 5, expensive and overwhelming like everything else about her. "Diana," I replied, matching her tone exactly. "Thank you for having us." "Of course. Family is everything." The word family came out with just enough emphasis to make it clear I was something separate from that category. Richard Morrison emerged from the living room, 67 years old, silver-haired, wearing a Tom Ford blazer over an open-collar shirt, the casual rich look that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. He shook Vincent's hand warmly, then turned to me with that same polite distance I'd experienced for 2 decades. "Eliza, still driving that Honda, I see." "It's reliable," I said evenly. "I'm sure it is. Dependability has its virtues." He said it the way you'd compliment a child for coloring inside the lines, patronizing praise for low expectations. Then I heard her voice from the living room. "Mom, Dad." Sophie appeared in the doorway, and my heart squeezed. My daughter looked beautiful blonde hair in a sleek ponytail, wearing designer jeans that probably cost $400 and a silk blouse I didn't recognize. She looked polished, expensive. Nothing like the girl who used to beg me to make chocolate chip pancakes on Saturday mornings. "Hi, honey," I said softly. She glanced at me, then away. "Hey," that was it. No hug, no smile, just a monosyllable and a dismissal as she turned her attention to her phone. Vincent's hand found mine, squeezing gently. 21 years together, and he could still read my pain like it was written on my skin. "Shall we?" Diana gestured toward the dining room with the confidence of a woman accustomed to being obeyed. We followed her through the house, past the sweeping staircase, past the gallery of family photographs that documented generations of Morrison success. There was Sophie at her debutante ball, Sophie graduating from high school, a small wedding photo of Vincent and me positioned where visitors might easily miss it. The dining room was exactly what I'd expected. The mahogany table could seat 12 but was set for 5. A crystal chandelier hung overhead, the kind that required someone to climb a ladder and clean each individual piece. Windows overlooked the back terrace and pool strategically lit to showcase the hill country view. And the seating arrangement. Oh, the seating arrangement was perfect. Diana at the head of the table, the seat of power, the position of judgment. Richard to her right, close enough to murmur strategic observations. Sophie beside her grandfather, already aligned with their program, even if she didn't realize it yet. Vincent and I were directed to the opposite side, physically separated from the family unit. Outnumbered 3-2. Positioned so we had to look up the length of the table to meet Diana's eyes. It was courtroom seating. Defendant and counsel on one side, prosecution on the other, judge presiding. Carmen appeared with wine pouring for Diana first, then working her way around the table with practiced efficiency. When she reached me, I caught her eye and saw the warning there again. She'd worked in this house long enough to recognize when something was building. Diana lifted her wine glass. The crystal caught the chandelier light, refracting it into tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth. "Before we begin," she said, her voice carrying the weight of prepared remarks, "I want to propose a toast." She looked at Vincent, then at me, then back to Vincent. "To family," she said. "To the bonds that define us, the legacy we protect, the future we secure." Every word was chosen deliberately. Every pause calculated. Vincent raised his glass hesitantly. Sophie glanced up from her phone just long enough to lift hers. Richard's smile was serene, the expression of someone who knew exactly how the evening would unfold. I raised my glass and said nothing. "To family," they echoed. The word felt like a threat. The first course arrived seared scallops with microgreens and sauce dots that probably had a French name. Food designed to impress rather than satisfy. Diana cut into her scallop with surgical precision. "We just finalized the domain expansion project," she said, as if continuing a conversation we'd all been part of. 10-year development. $2.3 billion in total investment. Takes real vision to see opportunities like that. She said it the way professors explain basic concepts to struggling students. I'd approved that funding 18 months ago. Every single dollar came from my holdings. But I just nodded and said, "Sounds ambitious." The word seemed to disappoint her. She'd wanted engagement, maybe argument. Instead, I gave her nothing. "It's the largest mixed-use development in Central Texas," Richard added. "Diana built this company from nothing, turned it into something remarkable. From nothing. The lie was so smooth they probably believed it themselves. Eleanor had put in the first $1 million, the first contacts, the first vision. Diana had stolen it and rewritten history. "Speaking of building futures," Diana said, turning to Sophie with a warm smile. "How are you feeling about the internship, sweetheart?" Sophie's face lit up, the first real smile I'd seen from her all evening. "I love it, Grandma. The marketing team is amazing. And Mr. Webb said my presentation on social media strategy was really innovative." Marcus Webb, my consultant client. The man I'd helped save $12 million last quarter. "You're a natural," Diana said. "Real leadership potential. Some people have it, some don't." Her eyes flickered to me for just a second. "It's genetic, I think. The cut was so subtle that if you weren't paying attention, you'd miss it. But I felt it land." Vincent's hand found mine under the table. His fingers were tight with restrained anger. "Mom's really good at leadership," Sophie said suddenly, and hope flared in my chest. "She runs her whole consulting business by herself." "That's lovely, dear," Diana interrupted smoothly. "Small business ownership is admirable, though of course it's different from corporate leadership. Different scale, different stakes," she smiled at me. "No criticism intended, Eliza. We all contribute in our own way." The hope died. "Eliza, did I mention I ran into Patricia Blackwood last week?" Diana continued, her voice light and casual. Here it comes, I thought. "She's doing remarkably well. Just bought a place in River Oaks, Houston, you know. Absolutely stunning property. 4 acres. The garden alone is something out of Architectural Digest." "I'm happy for Patricia," I said carefully. "She asked about Vincent, of course." Diana's smile could have cut glass. "She's still single, you know. Still building that legal empire downtown. Some people really do make the most of their potential." The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Vincent set down his fork with controlled force. "Mother, what I'm simply catching Eliza up on old friends." Diana's expression was innocent. "Patricia and Vincent were such close friends in college. Weren't you, darling?" "We dated briefly sophomore year," Vincent said tightly. 25 years ago. "Such a shame that didn't work out," Richard mused. "Patricia's firm just landed the Meridian Group account. $50 million deal. Real powerhouse, that woman." I took a sip of wine and said nothing. Let them talk. Let them reveal themselves. Because in my purse, 10 feet away in the foyer, was Eleanor's letter. In my phone was Julian Rhodes's number. In my heart was 21 years of preparation for this exact moment. They thought they were in control. They had no idea. The main course arrived beef tenderloin that probably cost $180 per pound. Carmen placed the plates before us with apologetic eyes. "Grandfather's given me real responsibilities now," Sophie said, and I couldn't tell if she was talking to me or through me. "I'm coordinating with the development team on the domain integration. Real work. Strategic planning. Not just consulting." She said consulting like it was something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. "That's wonderful, honey," I said, trying to catch her eye. But Sophie was looking at Vincent now. "Don't you ever wish things were different, Dad? Don't you ever wonder what life would be like if you'd married someone with actual ambition, someone who wanted to build something?" The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Sophie, don't," Vincent said, his voice low and warning. But our daughter wasn't finished. She looked directly at me, 18 years old, and absolutely certain of her judgment. "Mom, be honest. Don't you ever feel like you're holding Dad back? Everyone can see it. You live in that tiny house when you could have something better. You drive that embarrassing car. All my friends' parents have lake houses and boats and—" She stopped, recalibrated. "You're not good enough for him. You never were." She said it like a simple truth, like commenting on the weather or stating the obvious. No malice, no anger, just cold assessment. "Sophie," Vincent said, his voice breaking. "That's your mother you're talking about." "I know who she is, Dad." Sophie turned to him and her voice softened slightly, became almost gentle. "I love you, and I want you to be happy, but Mom's not making you happy. She's making you settle." She gestured vaguely around the room. "Grandma and Grandpa are trying to help. They want you to have the life you deserve. Someone like Patricia, someone with a real future, someone who wouldn't embarrass you." The word embarrass hung in the air like smoke from a gun. I watched my daughter, the baby I'd carried, the toddler I'd rocked through nightmares, the girl I'd helped with algebra homework, and I understood that Diana had won this round. She'd taken my daughter and turned her into a weapon against me. Vincent pushed back from the table. "That's enough. Sophie apologized to your mother." "Why, I'm being honest. You're being cruel. There's a difference." Diana's voice cut through, sharp and commanding. "Vincent, sit down. Let the girl speak her truth." "Her truth," Vincent's voice rose. "Her truth is poisoned by your contempt, Mother. You've spent years teaching my daughter that her mother isn't good enough, and now you're using her to what?" Diana stood now too regal and cold. "To state what we're all thinking, that Eliza is lovely, but she's not a Morrison. That she doesn't have the drive, the vision, the capacity to be part of this family at the level we operate." "I never wanted to be a Morrison," I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. "What?" Diana's eyebrows raised. I set down my napkin carefully. My hands weren't shaking. My voice was steady. "I never wanted to be a Morrison. I wanted to be Vincent's wife. I wanted to build a life based on honesty and love and mutual respect. I've done that. The fact that you can't see value in it says more about you than it does about me." Diana's smile was pitying. "Of course, dear. Of course you're content. Some people are simply built for smaller lives." "Smaller," I repeated. Interesting word choice. "Mother, I swear to God," Vincent started. But Diana held up a hand. "Actually, that's perfect segue. Vincent, Eliza, there's something Richard and I need to discuss with you." She reached beneath the table with the deliberate movements of a magician about to perform her final trick. When her hand emerged, it held a leather folder. Expensive, substantial, the kind lawyers use for important documents. She placed it on the table between the wine glasses and dessert plates with a soft thud that might as well have been a gunshot. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Diana looked at me with an expression I'd seen before in boardrooms and negotiation tables, the expression of a woman who believed she'd already won, who was simply waiting for her opponent to acknowledge defeat. "Eliza," she said, and for the first time all evening, her voice carried something other than condescension. It carried finality. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about your future with this family." My heart was pounding, but I kept my breathing steady. 21 years of yoga and meditation had taught me how to appear calm when everything inside was screaming. "Go ahead," Diana said, sliding the folder toward me. "Open it." I looked at Vincent. His face had gone pale, but he gave me a slight nod. Whatever this was, we'd face it together. I opened the folder. Inside, stapled with $500 an hour legal precision, lay an annulment agreement. 23 pages of whereas clauses and party of the first part language that all boiled down to one simple proposition. My marriage had been a mistake, and mistakes could be corrected for the right price. Clipped to the front was a check. Made out to Eliza Hartley, my maiden name, as if the marriage had never happened. The amount $275,000. The number felt arbitrary until I did the math. At $65,000 a year, my approximate consultant income, it represented just over 4 years of salary. Not 7 like I'd calculated. They'd undervalued me even in their bribe. "What the hell is this?" Vincent's voice was deadly quiet. Diana kept her eyes on me. "Eliza, I'll be direct. You married above your station. That's not an insult, it's a fact. Vincent could have had anyone. He could have had Patricia Blackwood. Old money, brilliant mind building a legal empire. Instead, he chose you." She let that word hang, chose, like it was a mistake that needed correcting. "We tried to accept this marriage," Richard added, his voice gentle, almost kind. "God knows we tried, but we can't stand by and watch our son struggle financially because of pride. We're not struggling, I said quietly. Sweetheart, Diana's voice dripped with pity. You live in an 800-square-foot house in East Austin. You drive a car that's almost 10 years old. Vincent hasn't taken a real vacation in how long? When was the last time you went somewhere that wasn't camping in Big Bend? We like camping, Vincent said. Diana ignored him. This solves everything. She tapped the check with one manicured finger. That's more than 4 years of your salary, Eliza. Sign the annulment, take the money, and move on. You'll be better off, and Vincent can return to a life suited to his background, his potential. The silence that followed pressed against my ears like physical weight. Then Vincent stood so fast his chair scraped against the hardwood floor. This is insane. You can't buy people— Vincent, sit down, Diana commanded. The adults are talking. I'm 50 years old, Mother. Then stop acting like a child and see what's right in front of you. Diana's composure cracked slightly. Your wife is holding you back, financially, socially, professionally, and you're too loyal or too stubborn to admit it. She turned back to me. Eliza, please. Think of Sophie. Think of Vincent. Be realistic about what you can offer versus what this family needs. $275,000 is more than generous. It's more than you'd make in years of consulting. Take it. Start over. Let Vincent find someone who can actually help him build the life he deserves. I picked up the check, studied it. Let them believe I was tempted. Diana's smile was almost sympathetic now, almost kind, like she was offering me a life raft instead of trying to erase me from existence. It's for the best, she said softly. Deep down you know it is. Sophie was watching me with something that looked like pity. Richard looked satisfied. Vincent looked like his world was crumbling. And I thought about Eleanor, about the letter in my purse, about 25 years of preparation for this exact moment. I set the check down carefully and reached for my phone. Before I respond, I said, my voice steady, despite the rage building under my skin. I need to make a quick call. Diana frowned. What does your attorney have to do with everything? I interrupted quietly. I pulled up Julian Rhodes's contact and placed the phone on the table speaker mode. The room went still. Who are you calling? Richard demanded. My attorney, I said. Julian Rhodes. He's been managing my interests for 25 years. Your interests? Diana's laugh was sharp. What interests could you possibly— The dial tone echoed through the dining room like a countdown. 1 ring, 2, 3. Vincent was staring at me, confusion and hope warring on his face. 4 rings, Julian answered. Eliza, everything all right? His voice filled the room through the speaker, warm and professional, and completely unhurried. Julian's sorry to call during dinner, I said. I'm at the Morrison estate with Vincent's family. We've hit a complication. They've just offered me $275,000 to annul my marriage. A pause on the line. Then, I see. And do they know? No, I said. I think it's time. Understood. Would you like me to walk them through the Hartley Holdings structure? Diana's face had gone from confident to confused. Hartley Holdings, what is, please? I said to Julian. Start with Morrison Development Group. Julian's voice was calm, methodical, the voice of a man who delivered this kind of information 1,000 times. Morrison Development Group, he began. Total market capitalization approximately $18.7 billion. 100 million shares outstanding, currently trading at $187 per share. Diana started to interrupt, but Julian continued smoothly. Primary shareholder Hartley Holdings LLC incorporated in Delaware in March 2008. Owns 47 million shares. That's 47% of outstanding equity valued at approximately $8.789 billion at current market price. The silence was absolute. Sophie's phone clattered to the table. Richard's wine glass froze halfway to his lips. Diana had gone completely still, her face draining of color. Only Vincent moved his head, turning slowly to look at me. Secondary shareholder, Julian continued relentlessly. Diana Morrison Personal Holdings. 18 million shares. 18% ownership valued at approximately $3.366 billion. That's impossible, Diana whispered. Remaining 35% distributed among institutional investors, employee stock plans, and public float. Would you like me to continue with the timeline? Eliza T. Please, I said softly. Initial investment March 2008. Mrs. Hartley, then Miss Hartley, purchased 15 million shares at 35 cents per share during the financial crisis. Total initial investment, $5.25 million, funded by inheritance from her grandmother, Eleanor Hartley. Diana made a sound like she'd been punched. Eleanor, she breathed. Additional purchases occurred over 17 years, Julian continued. 15% became 31% in 2010 following additional distressed asset purchases. 31% became 42% in 2015 after the Continental Properties acquisition funded entirely by Hartley Holdings Capital. 42% became 47% in 2019. Sophie found her voice first. Mom, you own every major expansion of Morrison Development Group. Julian said the Domain project, the Congress Avenue Tower, the 2015 flood recovery acquisitions, all were funded through Hartley Holdings capital injections. Mrs. Hartley has been the primary financial backer and majority shareholder of Morrison Development for 17 years. I watched Diana's world collapse in real time, watched her face cycle through disbelief, recognition, horror, rage. You, she whispered, you're the anonymous investor. I was never anonymous, Diana, I said quietly. I was just invisible to you. Richard set down his wine glass with a hand that shook. But the board meetings, the votes on major decisions, we thought the trust was voting with management, I finished. I was management. I've been approving every major decision for 17 years. Or did you think that mystery trust that always provided capital when banks said no was just lucky timing? Diana's hands were gripping the table edge. The Domain expansion. You said that was my vision. It was your proposal, I corrected. I approved the $340 million in funding. You gave a speech at the groundbreaking about business acumen and taking calculated risks. I watched from the back of the crowd while you took credit for decisions I'd made. The downtown tower, Richard said faintly. The one we had the gala at last month. $200 million in development costs. I approved every dollar. I looked at Diana. You lectured me that night about understanding high-stakes business, about what it takes to make bold moves. You were literally standing in a building that exists because I said yes. Sophie's voice was small, confused. But you're a consultant. You make $65,000 a year. We live in that tiny house. By choice, I said gently. Not necessity. Vincent hadn't said a word. He was staring at me like he'd never seen me before, and I couldn't read his expression. Shock, yes, but underneath was it betrayal, relief, I couldn't tell. Thank you, Julian, I said. I'll call you tomorrow. Good luck, Eliza, he said. You're doing the right thing. The line went dead. For a long moment no one moved. The chandelier continued its gentle sparkle above us. The hill country view remained peaceful through the windows. Carmen stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, witness to the detonation. Then Diana stood her chair, scraping back violently. This is some kind of fraud, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. You're lying. The SEC filings are public record, Mother, Vincent said quietly. He'd found his voice, though it sounded hollow. Anyone can look them up. Hartley Holdings has been disclosed as a major shareholder since 2010. But I would have known. You didn't look, I said simply. The trust was structured to be passive. No board seats, no public statements. Just capital when you needed it. And you needed it often, Diana. Every time you overextended. Every time your vision exceeded your resources. Every time the bank said no, I said yes. I stood helping myself to more wine with steady hands. Do you want to know why? I don't want to hear anything from you. My grandmother asked me to save you. The words cut through her anger like a blade. Eleanor Hartley, your former best friend, the woman you betrayed and forced out of the company you built together. She died believing you could change, that you could learn integrity. She left me $500,000 and one instruction: save the company and save you from yourself. Diana sank back into her chair. She wrote me a letter, I continued, 3 days before she died. She told me you'd fall again, that greed never learns. She told me to be there when you did, to catch you, but to make sure you learned something first. I pulled the envelope from my purse. 25 years old, yellowed with age, Eleanor's handwriting still clear and strong on the front. She believed in redemption, Diana, even for people who didn't deserve it, even for people who'd destroyed her. I placed the letter on the table next to the check Diana had written. 2 pieces of paper, 2 different philosophies, 2 different women's legacies. So yes, I sadly said, I've been your silent partner for 17 years. I've been the safety net you never acknowledged. I've been protecting the company Eleanor loved from the woman who stole it from her. Diana's face was in her hands now, shoulders shaking. Richard looked between his wife and me, lost. But why? Why help us if we... Because that's what love looks like, Vincent said suddenly. We all turned to look at him. He was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. That's what unconditional love looks like. Not because people deserve it. Not because it benefits you. But because it's the right thing to do. He stood and walked around the table to me, took my hands. How long have you been carrying this? He asked softly. 25 years, since I was 15 and Eleanor died. And you never told me. I needed to know you loved me for me, I whispered. Not for what I owned. Can you understand that? His eyes searched mine. I saw hurt there, yes, but also understanding, also love. I do, he said finally. I really do. Sophie made a broken sound. We both turned to her. Our daughter was crying mascara streaking down her perfect face. I called you. I said you weren't good enough. I said you were holding Dad back. I know, baby. But you own Grandma's company. You're rich. You've been rich this whole time and you let me think we were poor. We're not poor, Sophie. We're intentional. There's a difference. I don't understand. Her voice rose young and scared and confused. Why would you live like that if you didn't have to? Why would you drive that car and live in that house and let everyone treat you like I wasn't important? I finished gently. Because I wanted to know who people really were, including you, sweetheart, including your grandmother, including myself. Diana finally looked up, her face ravaged. You've been testing me. No, I said. I've been saving you. There's a difference. But yes, for the past 14 months I've been watching, waiting to see if you'd ever see past the surface, if you'd ever value character over capital. I picked up the check she'd written. $275,000. You calculated my salary and decided that was my worth. You offered me 4 years of income to disappear from your son's life. I tore the check in half, then in half again. But I'm worth $8.7 billion in Morrison Development stock alone. This check wouldn't cover an hour of my dividend income. I let the pieces fall to the table like snow. I don't want your money, Diana. I never did. I wanted a family. I wanted to be accepted for who I am, not what I own. And tonight you've shown me exactly what you value. Vincent moved toward the door, pulling me gently with him. We're leaving. Wait, Diana started. No, Vincent's voice was ice. You tried to buy my wife. You poisoned my daughter against her mother. You spent 21 years making the woman I love feel worthless. And all that time, she was the one keeping your company alive. We're done here. Sophie stood. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Neither did I, Vincent said. But I'm going to spend the next week figuring out what that means. For now, you need to decide who you want to be, Sophie. The woman your grandmother raised or the woman your mother is. We walked toward the foyer. Behind us, I heard Diana say my name, just once. Eliza. I turned. She looked old suddenly, small, human. There's a board meeting Monday morning at 9, I said quietly. I suggest you attend. We're going to discuss some changes in leadership. And Diana, the embezzlement, the gambling losses, the SEC investigation. I know about all of it. Monday we're going to fix it. Together. Whether you want to or not. Then Vincent and I walked out into the warm Texas night. We sat in the car for a full minute before Vincent started the engine. The Morrison estate glowed behind us like something from a dream. Or a nightmare. Through the windows I could see shadows moving. Diana and Richard. Sophie. The family I'd tried to be part of for 21 years. The family that had just learned everything they thought they knew was wrong. Say something, I whispered. Vincent was gripping the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I don't know what to say. Are you angry? I don't know what I am. He turned to look at me finally. 21 years, Ellie. We've been married 21 years, and you've been a billionaire the entire time. Not the entire time, just most of it. A sound escaped him that might have been a laugh or a sob. Most of it, right? Just most of our marriage you've had enough money to buy small countries, and I've been defending you to my mother about our modest lifestyle. Vincent, I took pride in it. He continued, his voice rising slightly. I took pride in the fact that we didn't need their money, that we'd built something real on our own. And the whole time, it was real, I said urgently. Every bit of it was real. The house we chose, the life we built, the values we lived, that was all real, Vincent. The money didn't change any of that. Didn't it? He finally looked at me. You let my mother humiliate you for 2 decades. You sat through dinners where she treated you like you were worthless. You watched our daughter learn to be ashamed of you. And you could have stopped it at any time with one phone call. Why didn't you? The question I'd been dreading. Because I needed to know, I said. I needed to know if you loved me for me. If Sophie would value character or cash. If Diana would ever learn humility. I needed to know who people really were when they thought I had nothing. And now you know. Now I know. He was quiet for a long time. Then he started the car. We drove through Westlake Hills in silence. Past the estates and perfect lawns. Past the country club where Diana had given me pitying smiles. Past the world of old money and older prejudices. Then we crossed back into East Austin, and the houses got smaller. The lawns got real. The lights in windows became warm instead of showcase. Vincent pulled into our driveway and cut the engine. Our bungalow looked exactly the same as it had 3 hours ago. 850 square feet of home. Our choice. Our values. Our life. I knew, Vincent said suddenly. I turned to him. What about the money? Not the details, not the amounts. But I knew we had money. He looked at me. 5 years ago, I needed to access my trust fund for something. I had to provide financial disclosure. That's when I saw our joint account balance. $47 million. My heart stopped. You knew for 5 years? I didn't know where it came from or how much more there was. But yes, I knew we weren't actually living paycheck to paycheck. Why didn't you say anything? Same reason you didn't tell me everything. His smile was sad. I needed to know if you'd married me for me. If when you had all that money, you'd still choose this life. Choose us. I needed to know if your values were real. We stared at each other across the car's center console. We were both testing each other, I said. We were both terrified, he corrected, that the other person wasn't who we thought they were. And I've spent 5 years watching you choose me every single day. Watching you live with integrity even when it cost you. Watching you be exactly who you said you were, money or no money. He reached for my hand. I'm not angry, Ellie. I'm in awe. You saved my mother's company. You protected my daughter's future. You let yourself be diminished so people could reveal their true selves. That's not deception. That's wisdom. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. We're quite a pair. We sat there in our driveway, holding hands across the console of our 10-year-old Honda, laughing and crying and being real with each other in a way we hadn't been in 5 years. Finally, Vincent said, "What happens Monday?" I take control of the company, publicly. Diana gets removed as CEO. The embezzlement gets addressed. The corruption stops. And Sophie learns that the grandmother she idolizes is a fraud, and the mother she dismissed is the one who's been holding her world together. That's going to hurt her. I know, but she needs to learn it. We walked into our small house hand in hand, and for the first time in 21 years, we did it as partners who truly knew each other. All of each other. Welcome back. If you're just joining, here's where we are. I revealed to my mother-in-law, Diana, that I've secretly owned 47% of her company for 17 years. $20 billion she knew nothing about. She'd just offered me $275,000 to divorce her son. I tore up the check and walked out. But the story doesn't end there. Because Diana wasn't just snobbish, she was a criminal. And on Monday morning, everything she'd built was about to come crashing down. Let me show you what happened next. I woke up at 5 a.m. Monday morning the way I always did. Vincent was still asleep beside me, one arm thrown across my waist. We'd spent the weekend in careful honesty, telling each other everything we'd held back for 5 years. The relief of finally being fully known was almost physical. But this morning I had work to do. I slipped out of bed and went to my laptop. The Bloomberg screen glowed in the pre-dawn darkness. Morrison Development Group was already trading up 3% on rumors of major announcements. The market sensed change coming. At 6:15, my phone rang. Julian Rhodes. "Morning, Eliza. Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be." The board members have all been briefed. Everyone except Diana knows about the vote today. Rebecca Marshall has agreed to step in as interim CEO if the motion passes. Rebecca Marshall, 53 years old, brilliant operations executive, had been running the actual day-to-day of Morrison Development while Diana took credit. She was everything Diana pretended to be: competent, ethical, respected. "And the SEC investigation?" I asked. "That's where it gets interesting." Julian's voice carried a note of surprise. "I did some digging over the weekend like you asked. The whistleblower complaint that started the investigation, it came from Patricia Blackwood." I sat up straighter. "Patricia Vincent's ex-girlfriend, Patricia." "The same. She's not just a corporate attorney, Eliza. She specializes in ethics investigations and corporate fraud, and she's been building a case against Diana Morrison for 20 years. My mind raced. "Why? That's something you should ask her yourself. She's requested a meeting with you this morning, 8 a.m. before the board meeting." I looked at the clock. 90 minutes. "Tell her yes," I said. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet of our small house thinking about the pieces I didn't understand yet. Patricia Blackwood had filed the SEC complaint. Patricia was the one who'd approached Morrison Development about an acquisition 6 months ago. Patricia was somehow central to all of this, and I was about to find out why. I met Patricia at a coffee shop on Congress Avenue, 3 blocks from Morrison Development headquarters. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. 48 years old, elegant in a navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun. She had the kind of presence that made people look twice, not because she was trying, but because competence has its own gravity. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for meeting me. Please call me Eliza. And thank you for the coffee." I sat down studying her. Though I have to admit I'm curious why the woman who filed an SEC complaint against my mother-in-law wants to meet with the majority shareholder. Her smile was brief, appreciative. "Direct. I like that." She took a sip of her coffee. "How much has Vincent told you about me? That you dated briefly in college, that his mother wanted him to marry you, that you run a successful law firm downtown." "All true, but not complete." She set down her cup. "My father was Thomas Blackwood. He was a commercial contractor here in Austin. Small operation, 20 employees, solid reputation, honest work." Was. Past tense. In 2003, Patricia continued, her voice carefully controlled. The city put out bids for a municipal building renovation. $3.2 million contract. My father submitted an honest bid. Diana Morrison's company underbid him by 15%. I knew where this was going, but I let her tell it. Except Diana didn't actually underbid him. She paid off a city council member named Gerald Marsh, guaranteed herself the contract. Then she used substandard materials and pocketed the difference. My father lost that bid, lost 3 more the same way over the next 18 months. By 2004, his business was bankrupt. Patricia's hands tightened around her coffee cup. He killed himself in June 2004. Sleeping pills. Left a note that said he couldn't live knowing corruption had beaten honesty, that the game was rigged and he'd been a fool to play it straight. "I'm so sorry," I said quietly. I was 26, Stanford Law first in my class, had offers from firms in New York, San Francisco, places where I could have made millions. Her eyes met mine. I turned them all down. I stayed in Austin, and I spent the next 20 years building a case against Diana Morrison. The coffee shop noise faded around us. This wasn't just business. This was personal. "I documented everything," Patricia said. "Every corner she cut, every contractor she cheated, every law she bent." I became an expert in corporate fraud specifically, so I could understand how she operated. I waited until I had enough evidence to destroy her. "And 6 months ago you filed the SEC complaint." 6 months ago I had everything I needed. Proof of embezzlement, bid-rigging fraud going back decades. The SEC investigation isn't just about recent activity, Eliza. It's about a pattern of corruption that's defined Diana's entire career. I thought about Eleanor's letter, about saving Diana from herself. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Patricia leaned forward. "Because when I started my due diligence for the acquisition, I discovered something unexpected. The majority shareholder of Morrison Development wasn't Diana, it was you, Hartley Holdings, Eleanor Hartley's granddaughter. You knew my grandmother. Not personally, but I researched her extensively. She was Diana's first victim, the original betrayal that started everything. When I found out you owned 47%, I had a choice. I could reach out to you and work together, or I could work independently. You chose independently. I did, because I wasn't sure whose side you were on. For all I knew, you were complicit in Diana's corruption. You'd been a silent investor for 17 years. Why? It was a fair question. I told her about Eleanor's letter, about the instruction to save the company and save Diana's soul, about 25 years of trying to follow my grandmother's dying wish. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "Your grandmother was a better person than I am," she said finally. "I don't want redemption for Diana. I want justice for my father." "What if we could have both?" She looked at me sharply. "What do you mean?" "This morning's board meeting, Diana gets removed as CEO. The embezzlement gets addressed. But instead of pressing criminal charges, we offer her immunity in exchange for full cooperation with the SEC. She testifies against everyone else involved in the corruption, contractors, city officials, anyone who participated. We clean house completely. And she walks away." "She walks away with nothing," I corrected. "No company, no power, no reputation, but no prison time. She spends the rest of her life knowing she was saved by the women she tried to destroy. That's its own kind of justice." Patricia considered this. "You're more merciful than she deserves." "Probably, but my grandmother asked me to try." "And what do I get out of this?" I smiled. "You get to acquire Morrison Development. My 47% plus Diana's 18% that she'll be forced to sell to cover her debts. 65% total. You clean up the corruption, turn it into an ethical company. Honor your father by making his death mean something." Patricia sat back, eyes sharp with calculation. "You'd sell to me, your grandmother's company. It stopped being my grandmother's company the day Diana forced her out, but it could become something better, something Eleanor would be proud of, if the right person runs it. What about you?" "You'd give up control." "I never wanted control," I said honestly. "I wanted to save it. You can run it better than I can. You understand the industry, the law, the ethics. I'll stay on as a board member, keep my shares, make sure it stays on track. But the day-to-day, that's yours, if you want it." Patricia was quiet, thinking. Then she extended her hand across the table. "Partners." I shook it. "Partners." "Good." Her smile was fierce. "Because Diana Morrison is about to learn that the women she underestimated are the ones who brought her down." The boardroom on the 23rd floor was already full when Patricia and I arrived at 8:50. 14 board members sat around the long table, executives who'd worked under Diana for years, outside directors representing institutional investors, Rebecca Marshall, who might be the next CEO. They filed in with coffee cups and tablets, professional masks in place. Diana arrived last at 8:58. She looked like she'd aged a decade since Friday. The confident stride was gone. The perfect composure cracked. She wore a suit that fit perfectly, but somehow looked wrong now, like armor that no longer protected her. Our eyes met across the boardroom, and I saw something I'd never seen before in Diana Morrison's face. Fear. She took a seat not at the head of the table. She knew what was coming. At exactly 9 a.m., Julian Rhodes called the meeting to order. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for convening on short notice. This emergency session has been called by Eliza Hartley, majority shareholder of Morrison Development Group, to address immediate governance concerns." I stood. Every eye in the room turned to me. For 21 years, I'd been invisible in this company. The consultant who did logistics work. The daughter-in-law who wasn't quite good enough. The woman Diana had dismissed before I even spoke. Now they saw me clearly for the first time. "Good morning," they said. "Most of you know me as Vincent Morrison's wife. Some of you know me as a consultant. What you don't know is that I've been the majority shareholder of this company for 17 years. I pulled up the slide Julian had prepared. Ownership structure stock certificates, a paper trail 25 years in the making. 47% of Morrison Development belongs to Hartley Holdings, my family trust. I've been the primary financial backer of every major expansion since 2008. The Domain project, the Congress Avenue Tower, the flood recovery acquisitions, all funded with my capital. Marcus Webb, the COO, leaned forward. I remember those capital injections. We were told they came from an institutional investor. They came from me, I said, through a trust structure designed to be passive and anonymous. I wasn't interested in running the company. I was interested in saving it. I clicked to the next slide. Financial forensics, bank transfers, gambling losses. What I discovered over the past 14 months is that Diana Morrison has been embezzling from this company. $53 million over 3 years through fake consulting fees and inflated contractor costs. She's also lost $238 million in personal gambling and speculation. The room erupted. Directors shouting questions, demanding proof, looking at Diana with shock. Diana sat perfectly still, her face ashen. Additionally, I continued waiting for the noise to die down. The SEC has been investigating Morrison Development for 6 months, based on a whistleblower complaint about systematic fraud. The investigation covers not just recent embezzlement, but bid rigging and corruption going back over 20 years. I nodded to Patricia, who stood. My name is Patricia Blackwood. I'm the one who filed the SEC complaint. I'm also here this morning to present an acquisition offer contingent on new leadership and full cooperation with federal investigators. The room went silent. The motion before this board, Julian said formally, is to remove Diana Morrison from the position of Chief Executive Officer effective immediately. Discussion. Marcus Webb spoke first. I move we vote immediately. The evidence is clear. Second, said one of the outside directors. No one defended Diana. No one spoke in her favor. Some faces showed sympathy, but sympathy doesn't change fiduciary duty. All in favor of removing Diana Morrison as CEO. Hands rose around the table. I counted silently. 13 in favor. 1 abstention. The motion carries, Julian said. Effective immediately, Diana Morrison is removed from the position of Chief Executive Officer. Rebecca Marshall will assume leadership as interim CEO. Not me. I'd made that clear from the beginning. I didn't want to run the company. I wanted to protect it. Diana stood slowly, gathering her tablet and phone with movements that seemed rehearsed, like she'd been practicing this moment in her mind. She looked around the table once at colleagues who'd worked beside her for years at the boardroom where she'd made decisions that shaped Austin's skyline. Then she looked at me. May I speak? She asked quietly. Julian glanced at me. I nodded. Diana took a breath. I built this company from nothing. She stopped herself. No, that's not true. Eleanor Hartley built this company with me. 50-50 partners, best friends. And when she threatened to expose my corruption, I forced her out. Destroyed her life's work to protect my secrets. The confession hung in the air. I've spent 25 years telling myself I built this empire alone, that I was brilliant and visionary and deserved everything I'd achieved. But the truth is, I stole it. From Eleanor. From contractors like Thomas Blackwood. From every honest person who trusted me. She looked at Patricia. Your father was right, and I was wrong. That should have destroyed me. Instead, it destroyed him. Patricia's jaw was tight, but she nodded. Diana turned back to me. And you, Eleanor's granddaughter, you spent 17 years saving me from myself, funding my expansions while I treated you like garbage, protecting my company while I tried to drive you out of my son's life. Her voice broke. I don't deserve mercy. I don't deserve immunity. I deserve prison. Probably, I agreed quietly. But my grandmother asked me to save you anyway, not because you deserved it, because redemption is always possible, even for people who don't seek it. I looked at Patricia. She gave a slight nod. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You resign effective today. You cooperate fully with the SEC investigation, full testimony against everyone involved in the corruption. In exchange, Patricia and I will petition for immunity. You'll lose the company, your reputation, probably your marriage. But you'll stay out of prison. Why? Diana whispered. Why would you offer me anything? Because my grandmother believed in second chances. And because the best revenge isn't destroying you. It's making you live with the knowledge that the women you dismissed were the ones who saved you. The board meeting adjourned at 10:15. Diana signed her resignation. Patricia's acquisition offer moved to due diligence. Rebecca Marshall took control, and I went to find my daughter. Sophie was in the marketing department on the 19th floor, sitting at a sleek desk with a view of downtown Austin. She looked up when I entered, her face a mixture of hope and fear. "Mom, we need to talk," I said quietly. "Conference room, now." She followed me to a small glass-walled room. Through the windows, the city spread out below us, a city my money had helped build and buildings my capital had funded. "I'm so sorry," Sophie started immediately. "What I said on Friday about you not being good enough." "You meant it," I said. "Don't apologize for being honest about how you felt. Apologize for the values that made you feel that way." She flinched. "I was wrong. About everything. You're not holding Dad back. You're not Sophie." I sat down across from her. "Do you know why Grandma Diana gave you this internship? Because I have potential. Because she was grooming you to be like her. To value money over integrity. To measure people by what they own rather than who they are. She poisoned you against me deliberately, systematically over years." Tears started down Sophie's face. I should have seen it. "You're 18. You're not supposed to see manipulation from someone you trust. That's not your failure. It's hers." I pulled an envelope from my bag. "This is a letter from your great-grandmother Eleanor, the woman you never got to meet because Diana drove her out of the company they built together. I want you to read it." Sophie took the letter with shaking hands. I watched her read Eleanor's words about redemption and integrity and the people you dismiss. When she finished, she was crying harder. "She sounds amazing," Sophie whispered. She was. And she taught me that the measure of a person isn't what they own, but what they do with what they have. That power without accountability is tyranny. That the strongest thing you can do is offer grace to people who don't deserve it. Like you did for Grandma Diana. Like I'm trying to do. I took a breath. "Sophie, your internship here is terminated. Effective today." Her head snapped up. "What, Mom, please, not as punishment, as education. You need to learn what I tried to teach you, that respect is earned, not inherited. That your last name means nothing if you can't back it up with competence and character. But my resume, my career, will be fine if you build it yourself. Start at the bottom, work your way up, prove you're more than just a Morrison." Sophie's face crumpled. "I don't know how to do that. Everything I have came from Grandma's connections." "Then you'll learn, the way I did. The way everyone who isn't handed life on a silver platter learns." I reached across the table, taking her hand. "I'm not cutting you off, baby. Tuition, housing, basic expenses, those are still covered. But the free ride ends. You want spending money? Get a job. You want our respect? Earn it." "That's not fair," she said, but her voice was small. "Fair would have been me stopping your grandmother from poisoning you 5 years ago. Fair would have been me telling you the truth about our finances so you'd understand that we chose to live modestly. We didn't have to. I let this happen because I hoped you'd see through it. I was wrong. I stood. I love you, Sophie, more than you know. But right now you need to figure out who you want to be. And you can't do that in the shadow of your grandmother's corruption or your mother's wealth. You need to do it on your own. Will you still—" She couldn't finish the question. "Will I still be your mom, always? Will I still love you unconditionally? Will I still let you live off nepotism and entitlement? No. Not anymore." I walked to the door, then turned back. "When you're ready, when you've built something real on your own, we'll be here, your dad and I, waiting to meet the woman you've become." I found Diana in what used to be her office, boxing up personal items. Photos of Sophie awards from industry organizations, a crystal paperweight engraved with CEO of the Year 2018. All the trappings of success she'd built on fraud and corruption. "Eliza," she said without looking up, "come to make sure I actually leave. Come to make sure you understand what happens next." She set down a framed photo Richard and her on their wedding day 45 years ago. "Richard wants a divorce. He moved out Sunday night. Said he doesn't know who I am anymore. Said he's not sure he ever did. I'm sorry. Are you—" She finally looked at me. "You have every right to gloat, to dance on the ruins of everything I built. Instead, you're offering me immunity and mercy. Why?" I sat down in the chair across from her desk, the same chair where I'd sat as a consultant being condescended to about logistics while I owned nearly half the company. Because my grandmother loved you, I said. Even after you betrayed her. Even after you destroyed her life's work. She spent her last days writing me a letter asking me to save you. Not your company, your soul. Diana's hands trembled on the photo frame. I don't deserve Eleanor's love. None of us deserve grace. That's what makes it grace. I destroyed her. I destroyed your father. I tried to destroy you and Vincent's marriage. I poisoned my own granddaughter against her mother. What kind of monster does that? A scared one, I said quietly. A woman so terrified of being ordinary that she sacrificed everything good in her life for power she could never actually control. Diana sat down heavily. How do I fix this? You can't. Not completely. Some damage is permanent. Richard might not forgive you. Sophie might never see you the same way. The city you tried to dominate will remember you as a fraud. Then what's the point? The point is becoming someone different. Someone who deserves forgiveness even if she never receives it. Someone who spends the rest of her life proving that change is possible. I pulled out a folder. This is the immunity agreement. You testify fully against everyone involved in the corruption contractor's city officials, anyone who participated. You cooperate with forensic audits. You make restitution where possible. And in return, no prison time. You sell your 18% stake to Patricia Blackwood at market value, which will barely cover your debts. You're prohibited from holding any position of financial authority again, and you attend therapy. Weekly, non-negotiable. Diana laughed bitterly. Therapy. For what? Gambling addiction, power addiction, whatever it is that made you willing to destroy people for control. I stood. Eleanor didn't just want me to save the company, Diana. She wanted me to save you. This is me trying. She stared at the agreement. What if I refuse? What if I fight you? Then Patricia presses charges and you spend your final years in federal prison. The SEC investigation becomes criminal prosecution. You die alone, disgraced with nothing. Diana picked up a pen. Her hand shook as she signed. I'm 70 years old, she said. I've wasted my entire life chasing things that don't matter. Building an empire on lies, destroying people who trusted me. Then don't waste what's left, I said gently. You can't undo the past, but you can choose the future. I took the signed agreement. Patricia's acquisition closes in 60 days. Rebecca Marshall will run day-to-day operations. I'll stay on the board to ensure we honor Eleanor's vision. And you? I disappear. No, you rebuild. Smaller, quieter, real. The way you should have done 40 years ago. That evening, Vincent and I sat on our back porch overlooking East Austin. The city lights spread out below us, our neighborhood transforming but still real. Coffee shops mixed with taquerias. New construction beside old bungalows. The messy, authentic growth of a city that hadn't forgotten where it came from. Sophie called me, Vincent said. She's devastated about the internship. I know. She asked if we were ashamed of her. What did you tell her? That we were disappointed in who she was becoming, but that we believed in who she could be. I leaned against him. Was I too harsh? No, you were exactly as harsh as she needed. He was quiet for a moment. My mother called too. And she apologized, actually apologized. Said she'd spent 40 years building a prison out of her own ego, and she was finally free of it. Do you believe her? I don't know, but I'm willing to let her try to prove it. He turned to face me. Ellie, we need to talk about us. My heart clenched. Okay. 5 years, he said. We both kept secrets for 5 years. We both tested each other. We both questioned whether the other person was real. I know. That's not a foundation for a marriage. That's fear. That's mistrust dressed up as protection. Vincent, let me finish. He took my hands. I understand why you did it. I understand why I did it. We were both terrified of being loved for the wrong reasons. But the cost of that fear was intimacy. Real intimacy. The kind that requires full honesty even when it's scary. I'm sorry, I whispered. So am I. But Ellie, I need you to know something. His eyes were serious. I don't care about the $20 billion. I don't care that you own my mother's company or that you could buy this entire neighborhood if you wanted. I care about this. He gestured around us. Our small porch. Our modest house. Our intentional life. This is what I chose. This is what I love. You, the woman who makes our bed every morning, even though we could hire someone. Who buys flowers at the farmer's market instead of from fancy florists? Who sits with me on this porch and counts stars like we're still 25 and broke? We're not broke, I said with a watery laugh. No, but we're real, and that's more valuable than all the money in the world. He kissed me soft and sure. 21 years of choosing each other. 5 years of secrets. 1 weekend of complete honesty. And finally the foundation to build something even stronger. What do we do now? I asked. Now we live our life, the one we chose. We watch Sophie grow up. We help my mother rebuild. We make sure Eleanor's company becomes what it should have been. And the money. We do what we've always done. We use it with intention. We help people who need it. We live modestly because we want to, not because we have to. We prove that wealth is about what you do, not what you own. I rested my head on his shoulder, looking out at our city, our neighborhood, our life. Somewhere across town, Diana was packing up her old life. Sophie was facing her first real challenge. Patricia was planning her acquisition. Rebecca was stepping into leadership. And Vincent and I were exactly where we'd always been, on our back porch, holding hands, being real with each other. The most powerful people aren't the ones who demand to be seen. They're the ones who see everything while remaining invisible, until the moment they choose to reveal themselves. And when they do, they change everything.